We arrived in Griffith in New South Wales, where we pulled up at the free camp in town at Willow Park. With a little creek running beside us, we hooked up on some carp and introduced pest species before heading off to find some great wineries. Next up, we went and searched for the cave home of a former Italian recluse who once lived here. We're here in Griffith in New South Wales and we've just arrived at Hermits Cave. This is a lookout right up top, and it's a location where back in the 1920s to the 1950s, Valerio Ricetti, an Italian immigrant, he decided to come up here and live on the side of this mountain in the caves. Obviously a bit of a recluse. But he lived up here in amongst these rocks. He had his own cave, which we're about to go and explore. I imagine he had these views. Not a bad spot on a perfect day. Let's head off and have a look along this track and see what we can find. And here we are. This is the start of the Hermits Cave lookout track. Valerio Ricetti was born and raised in the Italian Alps. He had just turned 16 when he arrived in Australia at Port Pirie, South Australia, in October 1914. Valerio had been working as a stonemason and concrete worker before leaving Italy. This track goes for just over 1 kilometre. That includes steps and rocky path. Says the terrain's moderate and above average fitness is recommended, but it should be just fine. Hope so, because I'm in my thongs. But a few years later in 1918, Valerio ended up in Broken Hill, but he left when a local barmaid named Joyce didn't reciprocate his romantic notions. The sign says this way to the chapel. Maybe thongs wasn't a good idea. He returned to South Australia, and with a year's wages in his pocket, he visited an Adelaide brothel where all his money was taken from his trouser pocket. When his attempts to retrieve the stolen money were thwarted by the brothel owner, he threw a rock through the shop window and was arrested by police. He was then sentenced to time in Adelaide jail. It sounds like a pigeon has made its home here at the chapel. Sometime later in Melbourne, 4 mates conned him out of several months' pay, and in his attempts to sell off his last possession, his leather coat jacket, it was stolen from him too. By this stage he'd had enough of people, and when he walked into the town of Griffith in New South Wales, he found cover from the rain in a cave with an overhanging rock at Scenic Hill. To walk here along the front of the cliff, full of all sorts of little ledges and spaces. Of course, back in the 1920s and 1950s, when he lived here, there would have been none of what we see today. Just would have been open fields, cattle, farmland. None of all the houses that we see today. Look who I found. Hello. And here it is. This is his main cave. The kitchen. So obviously he must have cooked there. I hope he was a short fellow because I'm already about to hit my head. He certainly wasn't into mod cons, was he? Mind you, back in the 20s and 30s there wouldn't have been too many mod cons, but this bricks, all the rock, certainly would have kept him cool. It's a little bit like Cooper Pedy where they build underground. He would have had a cooling system. He's up nice and high, would have caught the breezes, you'd think. Not sure if it's exactly the place to pick up the ladies, but hey girls, want to come back to my cave? Don't think it would have worked on Adele. Anyway, let's have a look around his cave. Griffith, New South Wales. Certainly a really interesting little town. Lots and lots of history. Some of it to be proud of, some of it maybe not. Very large Italian history and culture. Something like 60% of the population of Griffith here in New South Wales has Italian descendancy. Oh, we'll continue along a little bit further. Cheers, guys. It was here he chose to stay and build a new life as a recluse, putting his early stonemasonry career to use, creating an amazing home with caves, gardens, a kitchen and more. He lived here without being detected for 8 years until one day he broke his leg after falling from a rock. He was taken to hospital where he ended up befriending his doctor. As I continue along the track, you find these rocky areas with a number patched on them. So let's have an explore, see if we can find out what number 3 is about. This time we find this opening here, which goes all the way back. So I guess no matter which direction a storm or rain might be coming from, he's got protection. We've now found Valerie's garden. Number 9 on the list. Let's have a bit of a look. Thin piece of paper. Would it make any difference? Would it change for the better if I wrote you a poem? If I posted a letter? Is it maybe because I never knew quite where I was, and suddenly you told me, baby. This experience brought him to the attention of authorities, however, and when Italy joined World War II, all Italians in Australia were required to be registered. His life of vacancy wasn't accepted and he was taken off to prisoner war camp. After 5 months, he was moved to a mental institution for 6 months before being released on the condition he had an address to live. A lot of cactus.
If I told you that I don't know where I'm going, don't know what to say,
That's you from up here.
but I go without knowing. If I told you that I don't know what to
Adele's right behind me.
believe in, don't know how to pray, but I pray anyway. Tell me you're the one for me now.
Pigeons
'Cause what
in here,
am
that's
I
for sure.
supposed to do?
Yeah.
If you are not the one for me, then tell me now what I could do. Tell me you're the one for me now. I pray you
For the next 10 years, he lived and worked on a farm in Griffith, but still visited his cave on Sundays. By 1952, he had saved enough money to visit his brother back in Italy. He bought a return ticket, but after arriving in Italy, he became sick and died in his hometown. He was aged 53. Hermits Cave in Griffith is his story, a memory of a young man who grew up dreaming of living in Australia. Back in the day, you had fruit trees and vines and vegetables and flowers all growing here. He had it all designed so he got plenty of rainfall. There it is, that's a bit of a wander around here. Hermits Cave, Griffith. Very cool, very interesting. And worth exploring. Cheers guys.